Behave yourself, Jaws. The oval design I have chosen to cut this emerald into is called the short poval. By poval, the gem faceting design creator combined the Portuguese cut, which is known for many rows of facets, especially in the bottom half or pavilion of the stone, and the oval design. So poval means Portuguese cut oval. The creator of this design was Norman Steele, a very well-known gem cut design creator. In fact, Robert H. Long and Norman W. Steele were pioneers in the development of mathematical methods of designing faceted stones, long before we had computer software we have today to create gem cutting designs. And one of the best gem cutting teaching tools is their book, Introduction to Meat Point Faceting, which can still be found today. Mr. Steele published this design and made the cutting instructions available to all cutters in the May 1978 edition of the Seattle Faceting Design newsletter, which he and Mr. Long published from 1967 to 1997. After Mr. Steele passed away, Mr. Long provided copies of the newsletter to the United States Fasteners Guild, and all those great designs were placed onto facetdiagrams.org. so that fasteners can use them. You can download this design from the facetdiagrams.org database, and for more information on gem faceting diagrams and the facetdiagrams.org database, please take a look at my two-part video on reading a gem faceting diagram. I have other videos on cutting emeralds which were created in a lab like this Chatham Emerald rough, and I will leave links in the description so you can learn why lab-created emeralds are emeralds with the same chemical makeup as emeralds found in nature. And I will leave a link to an interview with Tom Chatham explaining all about the Chatham Company. In my opinion, this design is not a design that a new cutter should cut first. I would recommend someone starting out and faceting their first stones start with a standard round brilliant, or SRB, and then cut a square design with a step cut, and then try a rectangle or emerald cut or a trilliant. Then go for an oval or a marquise cut, and then anything and everything. My rationale is that you don't need to worry about the length to width ratios for a standard round brilliant or a square cut. For a standard round brilliant or for a square cut, the length to width ratio is always 1, which means the length of the finished stone is the same as the width of the finished stone, which makes it one less thing you have to worry about when you're cutting. Then moving up, on the next stone to cut, I'd recommend a rectangle or emerald cut using a step cut design. And this makes sense to me, as you do need to understand length to width ratios for an emerald cut design. However, as I explained in another video, The Secret of the Emerald Cut, you can get the length to width ratio completely wrong for an emerald step cut design, and this will still turn out great. So regardless of what the person who created the gem cutting diagram you use for any rectangular or emerald step cut, whatever they tell you as the length to width ratio for that design, the true answer is the length to width ratio equals whatever you want it to equal. You do need to be as accurate as possible with the length to width ratio for the remaining shape of gems that you'll cut, like the oval, the marquise, the pear shape. If you don't get the length to width ratio correct in these types of shapes, your girdle will look like the Rocky Mountains. You'll have problems in getting your facets to line up for the entire rest of the cutting of the stone. That's why I would choose designs to cut in the order that I've stated. However, if you're the type of person who wants to start with the biggest challenge first, then go ahead and start your first stone as an oval, marquee, or pear. But another reason I would not recommend this cut for beginners is that there are 209 facets in this oval design to cut and polish. Compare that with a standard round brilliant that only has 73 facets to cut and polish. And from looking at the gem facet diagram for a typical SRB, you can see that there are only 8 lines of instructions. 1 for the girdle, 2 for the pavilion or bottom half of the stone, 1 for the table, and 3 for the crown, the top half of the stone. Compare that to the 2 pages of instructions for cutting this pole vault design. For the pole vault, there are 4 lines of instruction just for the girdle alone, 30 lines of instruction for the pavilion or bottom half of the stone, and 22 lines of instruction for the crown, not counting the 1 line for the table, or a total of 55 lines of instruction where you have to set the protractor angle on your spindle. Again, that compared to just 9 lines of instructions for the SRB. I'm not saying a beginner could not tackle this job, I'm just recommending a more logical approach to deciding your first few stones to cut by using increasing levels of difficulty. But it's 100% up to you. Just enjoy yourself. I know many of you who want to know how much this stone is worth. Well, how about you tell us? Given that there are about 5 jewelry stores in every mall, at least in America, and given that most jewelry stores have lab-created emerald jewelry available, in addition to natural emerald, how about some of you viewers help us all out? And as a homework assignment, please visit your local mall and at one of the jewelry stores in that mall, ask for an estimate of how much a 20 karat Chatham created emerald gemstone would cost. If they don't have Chatham created emeralds, then ask how much any 20 karat lab created emerald would cost. Then you tell us. I think we would all really be interested in your feedback. I know I would. And this kind of brings us to the question that I can't answer for most new cutters, but it seems to be a common question, and that is how to price their stones, how to sell them, and what sells. There's just too many variables. I can tell you that in my personal experience, that you are in luck as a new cutter because amethyst is a good seller, at least in my opinion. Quality amethyst is a killer color. And in history, in the early history of gemstones, way before mountains of amethyst were discovered in Brazil, the list of top colored gemstones among the rich and famous was rubies, sapphires, emeralds, and amethyst. Now, I would recommend amethyst for a new cutter because amethyst rough is readily available and, in my opinion, not excessively expensive, and it's not too difficult to cut and polish. I am not saying amethyst is the only gem that sells. Not at all. Everything you cut is sellable. I am just saying that in my experience, a good percentage of customers love amethyst. And for some stones, like rubies, sapphires, emeralds, although your cut stone may take the customer's breath away, the stone may be of a variety and quality where the rough is relatively expensive, which means your cut stone just may not be in the price range for most of your customers, no matter how much they love the look, whereas it's more likely that amethyst will be. So that's just my view on it. I am not exactly sure what BOPIE plans to turn this beautiful whopper of an emerald into. She's mentioned both a ring and she's mentioned a pendant. What do you all think? For me, I'll be happy as long as she doesn't decide on a matched pair of earrings, because I don't want to have to tackle the pole vault cut again, at least for a while. Okay, so we've got a big piece of our Chatham lab created emerald. It's the biggest piece that I've got, and we're going to trim it so that we can cut a large oval. So I've put water in my trim saw. This is an Ameritool trim saw, 4-inch trim saw. You put water up until it just covers the bottom part of the blade. The blade is a sintered diamond blade, which means there's diamond layers throughout it, so when the first layer of diamonds wears out, there's another layer below it. So always buy the sintered blades. This is our flash guard to make sure water doesn't spill everywhere. You run it with a lot of water. And we've set the stone up to cut it just where we need it. And we're ready to cut. Always wear eye protection when you're working with the trim saws. And we have a piece left over for excess to cut into emerald later. And this is the piece that we are going to cut, a big piece of emerald. Okay, we're going to weigh our Chatham Emerald before we start our piece of rough, and it weighs 64.7 carats. Okay, Opie needs me to cut her in rather large oval emerald, around 18 by 13 millimeters. So this piece is just over 18 wide, so it's going to be a big emerald. So to find an emerald in nature with this color of green and internally flawless would cost a small fortune. So we're going to use the Chatham Emerald. It's still not really cheap, but it's affordable. I've got my emerald in the dop, in this transfer jig. So on the bottom part, I put some just some putty, because the piece of rough is not perfectly flat edged. It's not perfectly square. So the top part, as I push down on the dop, make sure that part's flat, and the bottom part, wherever it's not flat, will give with the putty. So I push down on the top part to make sure that it's got a good set and is level. Now I'm using an extra large dop here. I'm not going to use this dop. This is not the one I'm going to glue on. But the reason you use a big one at first is it helps you center the stone. You see, because it's large, it's easy to see that it's centered on both sides, on these sides. So now that I've got my stone centered, I remove this dop, which only used to help center the stone. And now I'll put in the dop that I'm going to use, which is a much smaller dop, still rather large. Now, when we push down with this dop, we should have it already, the stone centered. Now we have to put it into the fasting machine. And according to the diagram, we see the 96 indexes here, 48, 96, and the two sides, 24 and 72. So we want the stone going into the machine this way, not this way, not this way. You'd end up losing rough. So this is the way it goes in, because gives us the oval shape with the least amount of rough that we will lose. Okay, so we've got our 96 index set up. We want our stone going in this way. We could set it on our flat lap and make sure that we've got it perfectly level, but it's a huge stone and we can eyeball it and get it close, very close, which is right there. So then we tighten up the set screws in our pin or our index, and we're ready to cut the first facet. Okay, our width of our stone is now, will work, and we've got it set. So this would be the widest it could be. We have a lot more preforming to do. This would be the widest the width could be. .3, and then based on our length to width ratio of 1.27, you would calculate 1.27 times the width of 15, we'll just call it 15, means 1905 would be the longest the length of the stone could be if we have enough rough. I don't know. We have 19 millimeters. We have 22, 23. So the stone cannot be 22 long, it can only be 19 long using this diagram, because of the length to width ratio of 1.270. But we can make this stone 15 by 19, which is big. So I'll continue to work the girdle all the way around and preform the stone. Alright, this fourth tier is interesting. This is basically what Norman Steele did, was create a line or a ring around the stone. You can see this tier, it's the flat line. Right there, right there, right there. So, and the way that effect is done is by using the same index gear or tooth in your 96 index gear as the tier below, and just changing the angle. That makes it a flat line and cuts your diamond in half. So the next 3 tiers will be kind of a repeat of the bottom 3 tiers, and then he's going to make another line and make a final tier. So let's see how it turns out. Okay, we've finished polishing the pavilion, or the bottom half of our Chatham Emerald, and now we'll transfer it over to different DOP and cut the crown. So you make 2 puddles of about the same size. It's about 50-50. And then you thoroughly mix it, and then you have a couple of minutes to put it together on the stone and the dop before it hardens. We're using a cone dop on the bottom, and I had another stone slip off the dop because it wasn't a round stone. So this is an oval, not a round. It doesn't fit perfectly in that cone, so I'm not going to use super glue. I'm going to use two-part epoxy and lots of it, and hopefully this stone will not fall off the dop. Okay, so we want to put epoxy all over down that dop. We're going to fill that cone. And make sure there's epoxy all the way around it. And I'm going to push the stone onto the dop, tighten it up, turn it over so that the epoxy runs down onto the stone. And then you just move the stone and the dop around while it's hardening. And you don't need leave it alone enough so that it runs down the side like it just did there. So we'll have to clean that piece up. We don't want our epoxy to have to have the lap cutting the epoxy. After transferring dops from the pavilion to the crown, we need to reset our stone into the spindle of our Ultratech. If we don't line this up correctly, our crown and pavilion will be out of alignment. So from our cutting instructions, we know that the girdle is aligned at the 2 and 94 teeth of our index on one side, and with the 46 and 50 teeth on the other side of our oval. So you set the degree at 90 degrees, which is flat, and set the index at 2 or 94 or 46 and 50 or 50, and you lower the machine head until the stone just touches the flat metal that comes from Ultratech and is precision aligned. I used the 46 and later the 50 teeth to align the girdle. Make sure the girdle is perfectly flat, and then we're ready to start cutting the crown. Finished polishing the table of our oval. I went from 320 to a 600 to a 1200, and then I used the bat laps with diamond grit going through the 3000, the 8000, the 14,000, touched it with the 60,000, and then I finished it off with cerium oxide. So now we'll take the adhesive off, weigh it, measure it, and send it to BOPIE, our big emerald. So it's 19.9 carats. Thanks, and may your facets always meet. Happy faceting, everyone.